creeps, Andy here, and since I just did my reading wrap up, I thought I might try a different type of video for the month, and we'll see, you know, how you guys feel about it, if you like it, and then we'll go from there. But I wanted to talk about the horror movies that I watched this month. Not that I've watched a crazy amount, and they were mostly all older horror films, but I thought it might be interesting, I don't know, to talk about the movies that I've seen, and then if you guys can leave a comment and let me know what horror movies you watched this month, which ones were worth it, which weren't. I think that it's been a while since I've talked about horror movies aside from like a movie versus book, so I just kind of wanted to try it out and see if you guys enjoy a video like this. So these are the movies that I watched in April, so I guess it's like an April wrap up of horror films that I watched. So you guys know that I did a Ring movie versus book in April, and so I watched both the American version of The Ring and the Japanese version, Ringu. They're both about a videotape that after you watch it, you have 7 days to kind of figure something out or you'll die. It's kind of a curse, I suppose, in these two senses. Yeah, I did enjoy both of them. I think that the American version is definitely more fitting for an American audience. It's a lot more gory, there's more practical effects used, and it's a bit more creepy, I guess is the word. The Japanese film doesn't have practical effects in it. If somebody's dead in the movie, they're just like, that's it. That's all they do. They just stick their tongue out. No, not really, but they don't put on makeup and make them look like a decapitated, no. What word am I trying to think of? Desecrated? No. You know, when you're falling apart. Like, what word am I trying to freaking think of? You know what I mean. A corpse. Both are interesting. It is also interesting just to kind of see where the movie started from, because there are scenes definitely taken like shot for shot from the Japanese version to the American version. And I also really enjoyed revisiting The Ring. It is a lot better than I thought it was, to be honest. Like, I feel like it's a better movie than I ever gave it credit for. And it's cool that, you know, we can look back on those movies and appreciate them so many years later. So I think it's a pretty good movie. And in this case, better than the book. Yeah, if you guys want to watch my movie versus book and hear me talk about how freaking weird the book is, I will leave that link down below, because man, that is a strange book. One of the strangest I've ever read. That's how I feel about them. I enjoyed them both, but yeah, there's something about the American version that I think is, you know, obviously it's made for American audiences, so it's just a little bit more up our alley in regards to horror films. Here's what I know about Japanese horror films, because I am not a connoisseur in the Japanese horror film department, but I have seen quite a few films, and it seems like they're not big on like the practical effects, but I have seen some really messed up scenes in Japanese horror films. So I don't know if that's, you know, across the board for all of them. So let's move on now. The next movie that I watched was Terror Train. I've actually never seen this before, and it's a fun 80s slasher. It's about a group of students that are getting on a train, and it's kind of like a party bus, to be honest. But here's the thing, the kills are okay. There's not a crazy amount of cool practical effects, and a lot of the blood and guts is kind of, you know, like you look at someone and then you look away and you look back and they're dead, like that kind of thing. But yeah, not a lot of cool practical effects like other 80s slashers. And Jamie Lee Curtis kind of pissed me off in this one, if I'm, you know, to be honest. She's a horrible final girl in this movie. She's awful. First of all, she doesn't even do the final kill of the killer. So is she even the final girl? I mean, yes, she survives, but so do other people, and she doesn't even do the final kill. So that was really unsatisfying as a horror fan to watch. And then there's some weird stuff, like a gate's waist high, and she's just like, oh, it's like, just jump over it, Jamie. What are you doing? Oh yeah, this irritated me too. Everyone's like, hey, come with us. There's a killer that's been murdering all your friends and you're sitting alone in his lair. Maybe come with us. And she's like, it's fine. And then she doesn't even kill the killer. So there were just some things that irritated me about her as a final girl. And I feel like had I grown up with the movie, I would understand why it was a cult classic. You know, some movies are just so nostalgic for you that you just love because you saw them growing up and they had an effect on you. But for this one, watching it as I was older, there's definitely other 80s horror films that I enjoy more. I'm glad I watched it, but it's not my favorite. The next one that I watched is called Skinamarink, and this is a newer horror film. I think it was released in the last couple of years. And it's an interesting story of children that are left alone in the house. It seemingly that their parent just disappeared. And so they're left alone. They don't know what happened. Some creepy, weird things are happening. Voices are coming and going. People are showing up and disappearing. And it has a very nostalgic 90s kids feel towards it. Cartoons and toys. Yeah, it feels very nostalgic, especially if you guys were raised like me in the 90s. It does play well off of those childhood fears for sure. That really is the kid's biggest fear. Like, you just wake up one day and your parent just disappeared and you can't get out of your house. That's terrifying. It's an interesting movie because the shots and the usage of characters are not used in a traditional sense. So you hardly ever see the children. You see, like, you know, their foot if they're standing, or an arm if they're grabbing something. You hear their voices, but they're not used as normal characters. And I thought that that was really interesting. And a lot of the scenes and the way that the movie is filmed and the way that music and things are used, it is a really interesting movie. It began as a short film and then it was made into a full-length horror film. There are definitely a few creepy scenes and really fun cinematography in this that I did enjoy watching. However, I will say that I felt like it was a bit too long for me. I didn't watch the short film because I just kind of assumed it would be portions of the movie, but I feel like it just makes more sense for this to be a shorter film. There's a lot of scenes where you're just staring at a wall for 30, 45 seconds, a minute and a half, and you're like, okay, come on. And I guess that now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like maybe it was there, I mean, it was there for a reason, but maybe in the sense of like, as a child waiting, it's seemingly taking forever. You know what I mean? Like, I remember one time, this is super embarrassing, but I remember one time the dentist called me back. My mom's like, do you want me to go with you? I'm like, I'm an adult. I can go by myself. I was a really young kid. But I told her, no, I got this. And I go in the chair and the doctor took so long to get, or the dentist took so long to get back to me that I started crying in the chair because I thought they forgot about me. The building's like this big. What do you mean? And obviously it probably wasn't even that long. It's probably 5 minutes, but 5 minutes to a kid feels like an eternity. And so maybe the scenes were used on purpose and the length of time was used on purpose, but also it's a balancing act, right? Because in a horror movie, you have to hold some of that tension, and if they're so long where you're just staring at a wall, the tension kind of dissolves. So yeah, I felt like I would kind of zone out for a bit and lose that tension that the previous creepy scenes had created. I really did enjoy the originality and that it was left open for interpretations. I saw other people's interpretations. I have my own interpretations of it. I did enjoy it, but I think also one other thing is that like it almost felt too comfortable for me because it felt so nostalgic because of the, you know, the way that it was filmed, the camera usage, like it made it seem like it was filmed in the 90s, the cartoons, the toys, everything. It almost felt nostalgic and like calming to be home, you know what I mean? So it was a really interesting setting for a horror film. But let me know if you guys have seen it. If you guys haven't, it is currently on Shudder, so you guys can check it out if you want to. But I will warn you, not for everybody, and I totally understand why. I can see why people love it. I can see why people hate it. I think I'm kind of in the middle, you know? I enjoy it for its uniqueness and its originality, but I can see why people would maybe get a little bit bored watching it. That's a tough, you know, line to toe. But yeah, I did like it for what it was, and even my husband, who has zero patience, actually did enjoy it as well, which is surprising because he does not like experimental type horror films. I mistakenly had him watch Eraserhead with me once, and he was like, what the fuck are we watching? But anyways, yeah, so that was Skinamarink. And then the last film that I watched this month was Veronica. This is a Spanish horror film, I believe. Yeah, they're in Madrid, right? I think it's in Madrid, and it's about a girl who goes to it's some sort of religious school. I'm not big on religion. I don't know what it is, but they have like nuns and stuff. It's a young girl. Her father has passed away, and she's kind of taking a lot of the motherly responsibility of her siblings onto herself, and so she's, you know, having to raise her. Kind of raise her siblings, you know, cook for them and care for them and bring them to and from school and things like that. So in school, presumably in high school, her and her friends kind of sneak away and mess with the Ouija board, and some creepy stuff happens. It's an interesting kind of play on the possession story. It seemed like there were enough fresh and new and fresh and unique moments that it didn't feel like I had watched the story a million times. I really enjoyed this. Some of the cinematography and the scenes and the editing are really freaking cool and unique in this film. Like, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Wait, this is really cool too. So I really enjoyed it for those qualities. And I also think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's based on a true story. And if it is, I'm going to do a little bit of digging and research, and I'm going to make a whole video on it if it is the story that I'm thinking of. But now that I'm thinking of it, hold on, let me just Google it. Okay, yes, it's loosely based on true events. Yeah, so I will talk about what it's based off of in a different video, but I really enjoyed it. It is a Spanish horror film, so there are subtitles, so keep that in mind. But I thought that it was a unique, interesting film, and I'm really glad I watched it. I thought that it was pretty cool. But anyways, those are the horror movies that I watched this month. Let me know if you guys want this kind of updated video every month of like a wrap-up of all the horror I've seen, and then you guys could, you know, leave in the comments what horror you've seen, and we can go back and forth and kind of create, I don't know, like a little list of good or bad horror films and just kind of talk about them. And I don't know, you guys always have good insights on stuff, so let me know what you guys think about that. Otherwise, I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys!